Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webcast from the Keys to TA Transformation from Reactive to Proactive, sponsored by Findem. This webcast has been pre-approved for HRCI and SHRM credits. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credit. You'll receive an email from HR.com within 2 business days, which will include the certification credit information. You may also log into your HR.com account and view the credits you've received. If you have any questions during the webcast, click on the Q&A in your webinar controls and type them in, or simply just type them into the chat. And now, it is my pleasure to turn it over to our presenters today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. It's always very flattering when we get some folks who want to hear from us. My name is Brett Coyne. I'm the Chief Transformation Officer, and I also run what we call the Value Consulting team here at Findem. I live here in sunny San Francisco, Bay Area, California. I've been a practitioner for 25 years in the recruiting industry, and about 18 months ago, made a shift to the vendor side, and I'm working for Findem. And I'd like to also introduce Matt.
Hi, everyone. Matt Beck here. I'm the value consultant for analytics and reporting at Findem. I'm based out of Washington, D.C., also sunny today, but not necessarily known for that. I've been in the analytics space for approximately over a decade now, and very excited to be with all of you today.
Awesome. So Matt and I are super excited to present some information today that we think could be really valuable in how you think about recruiting, where you spend your time as a recruiter, and for leaders, level up for a minute more holistically, how to think strategically about not only building a tech stack, but help your team think about where they may spend time to get a heck of a lot of productivity when they're building candidate pipelines. So the title of our talk today is Stop Waiting and Start Winning. As a longtime practitioner, I found that a lot of times recruiters really operate it 2 ways. You would log into your ATS in the morning and you would wait, and you would hope that the right candidates applied. You would hope that the right referrals came to you. You would hope maybe someone that used to work there would boomerang back. If you couldn't find what you needed, what did you do? You went to your sourcing tool, outbound sourcing tool, and you started typing Booleans. And again, you would send them and you would wait, and you would hope that people would respond. That hiring manager meeting was coming. And at the end of the day, you start to panic. Why? You maybe don't have the candidates you need to deliver for your customer. That's what today is about, and that we're going to bring to life to show everyone how there's a better way to be proactive versus reactive. So a question I'm going to ask, how many of you either track your source of hire if you're a TA leader, or if you're a recruiter, how many are actually aware of your own source of hire at the end of the fiscal year? You're recruiting, you're working on a number of recs. Does your leader show you the number of, how many hires came from which source? And do you personally know? Let's see, I see the poll getting filled out here pretty quickly. It looks like most people do track their source of hire. I'm going to tell you something interesting. When I was coming up in the recruiting world, people would talk about things like time to fill. It's the most important statistic. I'd argue it's not that important. Over the past 25 years, it's interesting. I've seen, average cycle time across all roles hover around 60 days. You can do a lot to get your cycle time down, don't get me wrong. And I think with AI, that's really going to help. But at the end of the day, there are some things that are just out of our control. One of the pieces of information I think that I didn't find real valuable until later in my career, but now I'm very convinced is maybe the most important, is source of hire data. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And the reason why is, I'm going to share the results here. If you think about, source of hire data, it's really an indication of what are your highest converting or your highest performing channels. If you step back and stop thinking about recruiting just for a minute and you say, hey, if I was in sales and I was dependent on getting leads, would I want warm leads that more likely would convert at a high rate? Or would I want cold leads that maybe aren't going to convert as a higher rate? What I have found in the recruiting world is we love cold leads. We love the pride of going out and finding that impossible candidate. There are some people I know in the industry who are so good at this that they're well known and they speak at conferences, and they should. That is a skill set that you need in this industry, especially for difficult to find roles. However, when you're trying to scale and hire hundreds, if not thousands of people, it's very hard to spend your time just doing that and going after cold leads and getting enough of them interested fast enough to hit your hiring numbers. So if you think about what's happening in talent acquisition, whether it's yesterday, today, or tomorrow, there's always a lot of pressure. I was always asked as a TA leader to do more with less, show business impact very quickly with fewer resources. So that forces you to step back and think, okay, well, I can often get additional dollars. If I don't, I can maybe pivot them and put them somewhere else. Maybe I can get more technology. Sometimes I can get more people. The resource that you can never get more of is time. So when I was recruiting and carrying the full slate of recs, or when I was managing teams or I was leading teams, I was always thinking about that time element. Where are we spending time? How are we getting the most productivity out of ourselves and our team to deliver for our customers, which are hiring managers? Some will argue candidates are customers too. I believe that. But think about where are we going to get the most bang for our buck, if we will. And as I mentioned in the beginning, most teams wind up waiting. They're waiting. I apply, post a job, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for people to refer. Then if I can't find those people, I go out and I send a bunch of messages and I'm waiting. However, I think there's a better way. What's challenging today is that we operate in a world that can often be siloed. There are different ways we get talent. And when we look at the end of the year and we report on that source of hire data, what I often found and what we find across our customer base at Findem, it's very rare that we find anyone who is a steward of data and has what they think is a reasonably accurate source of hire, that more than 15% of their hires were direct source. Now, direct source means different things to different people. What I tend to think it means is you go out and you find people that you don't have a relationship with, you send them a message, you try to compel them to respond. That's done on some big platforms that start with an L or other outbound sourcing tools. Why I talk about source of hire data is if you look at that, right, it's very hard to put strategies into each of these channels when you're recruiting day to day because you have talent coming from all these different places. But what I've learned over the years is you actually can take that source of hire data, and if you look at all these channels on the right, you can turn that into a very proactive strategy. Instead of waiting for all the talent for all these channels to come to you, what if you thought differently and you said, I'm going to have a proactive strategy in each of these channels? Instead of getting the referrals that maybe I don't want, I'm going to go out and educate employees on how to find the right type of people that we hire in their network. That could be a great way to get talent. Internal employees. Not every company allows recruiters to source internally, but if you wanted to partner with your talent development leader or your people business partner, how do you actually go out and get the information on all your employees that might have gotten hired years ago? How do you get a look with AI today at their updated profiles and help match them to new jobs? Inbound applications. I'm hearing of some customers getting 1,000 to 2,000 applicants per rec. That's a lot of applicants to go through one at a time. I used to have to do it myself. You never look at them all. Ever, right? So you're probably leaving a lot of good candidates that you didn't have a chance to get to before you filled the rec. And then what do? You disposition the rec, they all go into the database, and the ATSs are not easy to search what we're looking for. What if you could proactively search your database and you didn't have to go back and look on outbound sourcing platforms to often find the same people? For leaders, the benefit of that would be if I'm going to spend money to drive paid media and additional traffic to my website careers page, and all those folks are coming to my database, I want to be able to search them in the future, right? And for recruiters, same thing. If you are able to go search your database, those folks have already chosen your brand at one point or another and applied. So what we're going to share today is some amazing data about what happens when you do spend your time in areas where there might be warm leads versus cold leads. So external sourcing, it's where most people spend their time. Up to 85% of teams we're hearing spend about 85% of their time sourcing is spent outbound sourcing, cold leads, low response rates, often low responded interested rates. And if I had an audience here, I could see you raise your hands. The question I like to ask is how many times Did you contact somebody on an outbound sourcing platform? I've done it multiple times in my career, earlier in my career before I figured this out. And I would ask somebody if they were interested. I've seen your profile. You look like it's a great fit for this job. And I got a response, was something like this. Hey, I applied 9 times to your company. You don't seem to know that. So no, I'm not interested. Or, hey, a good friend of mine who's in your engineering organization referred me to 2 different jobs. I've never heard back. I'm probably sitting in your database. All right. So what we're finding with the Findem platform, which allows recruiters to proactively source all of these channels instead of waiting, we're seeing a major shift in how we're able to help coach our clients to leverage their time and where they should spend time sourcing and cultivating and building pipelines, because the data that we have now for the first time that we're going to show everybody today is so compelling that we think when you see it, you will start to ask yourself, am I spending my time every day in the right places? And how might I maybe work differently to help myself and help my customers? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to take you through some very compelling data. And I hope you really enjoy what he talks about here.
Thanks, Brett, for teeing me up. I am here to talk about some of the findings from our 2025 State of Sourcing Channel Performance. This was an analysis that we ran over our customer base, including a subset of our customers across 35 industries, looking at about outreach going to about 300,000 candidates across 127 countries, looking across all of last year. And I'm going to kick it right into the first finding here. So this is some exciting stuff. And it's looking to see the difference of, we talked about that external sourcing as one channel. And if we look at the quality of our outreach in terms of reply rates, so of those you're contacting, how many are actually replying, and then how many of those folks are actually showing interest. What we're seeing is that there's this staircase that you can see, right, where overall the highest performing channel, right, for these folks is going to be those folks that you're rediscovering from your ATS and then are actively sourcing from that channel in order to see these results. So I'm going to show some views that help to really showcase the relative lift across both of these when you look at how these channels are performing relative to an external sourcing and outreach coming from that channel. So focusing in on the ATS rediscovery piece, and of course, what we're talking about here are folks that were already in your system. And in addition to that, you're looking at refreshed and up-to-date profiles of where they are now, as well as the information from their resume when they submitted it in the past. And then using that as a direct pool, right, to then actually reach out to these folks and make the decision, right, to use that channel as part of your outreach strategy. And the results here are really encouraging, seeing that 138% relative lift in reply rates, that 188% relative lift in contact to interest, and a reduction of 37% in the time to reply. So these folks are getting back to you faster, they're showing interest at a higher clip, and they're replying at a higher clip. Now, typically when you see that kind of data point, your next question is going to be, how does that work across a number of dimensions? And so the rest of the data I'm going to show this group today is how that actually pans out for us, looking across our customers as we start to break this out into some dimensions that you'll likely find useful. The first one here is to look at these efficiency gains, which we've defined as that reply rate lift, that lift in interest, and also the time to reply. What you're seeing is that there is a regional variance that occurs, but all in a positive direction, meaning that for reply and interest rates, we're seeing that folks are showing up to, in North America, 284% relative lift in interest, while also seeing some positive signs and a reduction in the time to reply. And that is, of course, we see the highest peak here in North America, but you can see that there are also some substantial lift figures for APAC, EMEA, and also we see some movement in Latin America as well. We also found that looking at the folks that are receiving this outreach, that women actually are replying and showing more interest from these ATS rediscovery channels than from a cold sourcing approach alone. And so one might even say that you come for the ROI, but you stay for the benefits. If you have particular programs around improving representation within your organization, there's some positive trends that direction as well. Now, there's also the question of, well, does this kind of approach work for my particular business profile? So I want to show for the rest of this data, focusing a bit on the profiles of these customers who are working with us, so you can get a sense of where you would fit in that strategy. The next piece then is to look at how ATS rediscovery performs when looking at public companies versus private. What we find is that there is actually the private companies are actually seeing an even higher benefit and this higher relative lift relative to their public counterparts. We also see that if we look at from looking at the size of the business, right, that there's actually an opportunity here for medium-sized businesses to really leverage their existing ATS. And especially as Brett mentioned, we're in an era where you're getting 1,000, 2,000 applications for a given rec, right? Being able to actually source from that pool after the fact. For these folks, we see that there's an absolute spike here, especially in interest for medium-sized customers here defined as 50 to about 250 employees headcount. And then finally, I want to close out my portion of this by highlighting a couple of trends that we're seeing in some notable industries here and flagging things like computer network security. Also, even in markets customers you may consider more non-traditional for using an advanced sourcing tool like primary, secondary education. We see some really strong trends, especially on the interest rates, right? The contact to interest rates, showing that that lift there is really, really performing well. So now that I've had a chance to walk through some of the findings that we have, I'm going to kick it back over to Brett to talk more of what you can do with your own process in order to leverage this type of approach. So if we know that this is working, then what is it that you can do?
Yeah,
so Brett,
great.
I'll go ahead and pass that back over to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Every time I see this, I get excited because it was years trying to get to a place where we could actually, have this aggregate data set. And I think for the audience, what I hope that you see is, we talked about a lot of different channels, a multi-channel approach. We did a real deep dive today on ATS rediscovery because it's a real challenge in the industry today. I mean, you have a database full of candidates. Not all are qualified for a position at your company, but these are folks that are trying to get into your company. They've applied to jobs. They have some type of affinity with your brand. They feel like it could be a good place to work. They've probably done a little research to some extent. Sometimes we see people apply to multiple jobs. We can't always find them. And what the data is showing you is that if we could actually find all the people who are qualified, match them to current openings or future openings in our company, it changes how you would engage with those prospects. You would have a different type of outreach. You might provide a little more personalization. You might let them know, hey, I know you've applied to some roles. We have a new one. We may have missed you in the past, but we found you now. That's what people want to hear. Candidate experience. One of the top 3 reasons people get upset about candidate experience is they just never hear anything. Right? The second is they get an automated message. The third is they never even have a chance to interview for a job. So how do you combine all these things and with AI that's available now, actually leverage your database? And for the leaders out there, it really is a way to future-proof any marketing spend that you're doing, knowing that if I spend the money today and I drive a lot more traffic to my careers page and I get a higher rate of prospect conversions, that if my recruiting team misses them today, or we don't believe they're fit for a role that's open today, or they interview and they're a silver medalist and they go into the database, that money I spent 3, 6, 9 months ago on that marketing effort can actually pay off for months, if not years. Right. And the reason I'm sharing, actually go back real quick, Matt, the reason I'm sharing that is, we can deep dive every channel like that. What the data is really showing is across all of these channels, being able to identify talent that you already have, you just don't know it, and understanding from which channel you're able to connect with them, the message changes, the tone changes, the engagement goes up, the response rates go up, the responded interested goes up. So recruiters, you can fill your candidate funnel much more quickly with qualified, interested people because they're more likely to get back to you. You can take your productivity through the roof when you're working across a number of recs to fill your funnel. The challenge we run into, at least I did most of my career, was it's a data trap. How do I get all this information? How do I go figure out where the alumni work? How do I figure out, what are they doing now? Do I want to invite them back? How do I get updated information on our internal population that has been working here for 8 years, their old resumes in the database? So looking at all of this more holistically and saying, hey, can I allow products and tools and AI to help me get to where I'm going in the future? I think what I'm seeing is I'm saying yes. If we embrace it and then we align it to the data Matt just shared, I think there's a much brighter future out there. So when I think about kind of the from to, we're very quickly moving from a world of where we're hunting. We have to do a lot of research. We have to go out and hunt. We have to cross-reference somebody's profile with all these different websites to see what did they really do. And then we have to send them a cold outreach to, hey, dude, can we get a consolidated view of somebody? Can we get more information about their profile than just a resume, right? The answer is yes. The technology's out there now. Multiple products, having to go log in, log out, log in, log out to do referrals, to look in my database, to score inbounds, to source outbound, to schedule interviews. What I'm seeing is consolidation in the industry. So how do we get all that channel access in one place? Findem can do that for you, right? It puts the mouse and keyboard in your hands to proactively search all of those channels, right? There are other technologies that are starting to do this. So the industry is starting to evolve to help us be more efficient as recruiters. When I think about it from a leadership perspective, right, I mentioned I never had enough money. I could usually get a little more, but it came with a trade-off. Never had enough money to buy all the technology I wanted to do, all the things I wanted to do to support the strategy. So you have to make trade-offs on an annualized basis, and that means something's not going to make the cut, and that means maybe a strategic priority that either the business wants to do, like drive an internal mobility strategy, or we want to take referrals from 20 to 30%, or we really want to start an alumni re-engagement program. Not everything, makes the shop floor. Some things make the shop floor, if you will, because they don't make the cut. And so how do you move to a world where you can consolidate all your technology into a platform, put an AI over it for workflow automation, one-stop shop to drive ROI and productivity across the team? We're there. So you might say, hey, this is great, a very inspiring, compelling opening. Matt took us through some great data. I kind of get it as a practitioner. It makes a lot of logical sense. There's a from to, and maybe what the past looked like and where we're going in the future. Maybe I'm ahead of that. Maybe I'm thinking about it. Maybe I'm scared of AI and where this is going, and I'm not really sure what does this mean. How do I get started? And so we're going to leave you today with what we call the 3 keys to transforming TA. How to maybe start working differently to get to a place in the future where maybe a lot of this data can start working for you, but you have to think about changing the way you work and where you spend your time. So, number 1, right? Making sure that you're going beyond the resume. So we call it accelerating application review with talent data you can trust. Findem happens to be a platform that we provide a lot more information about a candidate than just the resume. So getting more information faster on your candidate allows you to spend less time, I should say, going through multiple rounds of screening, and you can accelerate and ask more pertinent questions relative to the job, because we're going to provide a lot more important information than just the basics somebody might write on their resume. We can validate for you. We'll go cross-reference a lot of other platforms your team may or may not have money to spend on to go cross-reference to validate some of the things candidates are putting on their resume. So that's number 1. Going out there and looking at opportunities to partner with a vendor who can provide better talent data. Number 2 is workflows. Thinking through not only where are you spending your time now to get the maximum ROI, but are you thinking multi-channel? I mentioned the sales team and the marketing teams are always thinking multi-channel. Think of yourself as a consumer. A product brand might send you emails, they might send you newsletters, they might invite you to a webinar. They're going to invite you into their store, right? Different ways to get you converted. And then they're going to look at those channels, which ones produce the highest ROI. Recruiting, you can look at it the same way. And where am I spending my time? Am I waiting for referrals to come to me, or am I going and talking to a bunch of employees at the company and helping them identify for me, hopefully, right, their best referrals? Just one example. So am I thinking multi-channel? Am I trying to figure out a way to identify the talent that I think is the right fit for the roles without having to go outbound and send a cold message? There are a lot of ways that AI now can help you identify the same person you just don't realize. You probably they're in your database, they applied to a job, they know somebody that works in your company, they used to work at your company. Identify that up front with technology so you can send the right message that they know that you know who they are, that as Matt just shared, drives incredibly increased response rates and responded interested to lift your productivity. And number 3, change management. So I would say my biggest learning going from practitioner to vendor and working across a portfolio of customers instead of just my own recruiting team that I am part of or I am leading is how do you really think about that change from being maybe waiting, right, for people to come to you or waiting for people to reply who you're sending a message to a cold lead versus how do you play offense here and how do you put proactive strategies in each channel? We'll leave you with this, which I find really exciting about being here at Findem is one, the incredible data Matt presented. We have built a team in our post-sales organization of practitioners. So when we show up to take people live with the product, you're talking to someone who's done your job. So that and understanding what you might need to hear and learn to feel comfortable maybe working differently, combined with some of the data, we get really excited about the fact that we can potentially go into a new customer in the technology industry or the healthcare industry and say, our other clients in those verticals, here's our aggregate data set. We're going to get you started sourcing from your ATS and driving proactive referral strategies because we know in this industry, for whatever reason, based on our data set, those are the highest performing channels. What a great start as a recruiter to get off to a hot start where we already have data to support spending time in these channels will get you a much better return than what we're always used to doing, which is waiting for people to come to us or typing Boolean searches and waiting for them to reply. So with that, I'm gonna thank everybody for your time today. We really appreciate that you took time out of your day to listen to us. Matt, any parting words for the audience?
I think just really, if you're at a stage where you recognize that you're trying to get ahead of the trends that are occurring around you, right? There's a lot of opportunities now, and from what Brett has shared, to really do something different. And hopefully we have the chance to connect and talk more about how these solutions are working out for folks. I'll go ahead and drop just a link in the chat for those who are interested in learning a bit more about how our platform does it.
Agreed. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate you taking the time with us, spending the time with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this concludes our webcast today. I'd like to thank our presenters, as well as all of you for taking the time to join us. If you'd like to view this webcast again, the recording and the slides will be available on hr.com on our archived webcast page in 2 business days. Check your hr.com account for your credits. They'll also arrive within 2 business days. We also send out an email with the credit information for you. I would like to remind the audience to fill out a quick feedback survey that will open on a new tab on your screen. It only takes a few minutes, and your valuable input is key to improving the quality of our webcasts. Thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.